Hello, I'm Farid of Finextra, and we're here at Finextra Future Money in London, and I'm joined by Farid Khwaja of Berenberg. Ali, thanks for joining us. Now, the question that comes up time and time again is, do digital currencies pose a legitimate threat to the traditional banking system? What are your thoughts?
Innovation. So digital currency is a part of innovation, and you can even broaden the question and say, is innovation a threat to any incumbent structure? It's always a threat, but it's always also an opportunity. But it's a threat in the way that it will lower the costs in this infrastructure. And lowering the cost also means lowering of the profit pool, which the industry has been enjoying. But it also means that some new avenues will be made where people can create returns. But eventually, the bottom line, I think, is that with any innovative change, it's the consumers who benefit, because innovation typically leads to efficiency. Efficiency leads to lowering of costs, which if you can view it as a threat if you're not changing yourself, or you can view it as an opportunity because it enables greater benefit to the end consumers.
So with concerns regarding lack of accountability, do you think digital currencies can ever get widespread adoption? And also, what are your thoughts on anonymity?
So these are two different things. The first thing which you mentioned is lack of accountability of the system itself, which is a risk. But the second thing you said, anonymity of the system, which I think is a value of Bitcoins. So first, if you talk about accountability, clearly issues which have happened with Mt. Gox are a real concern, which will hurt the whole innovation in the sector, and which will deter investors from investing in the sector. So it has to be more accountability has to come in place. And it's a chicken and egg problem, because you cannot put more regulation at a point when the industry is just starting off. So that balance needs to be made. And I think it will only come gradually with time. But the second point which you mentioned, anonymity, I think that's one of the key virtues of Bitcoins. People want to use cash. The reason why people want to use cash is because it's anonymous. A lot of people have concerns about privacy. Bitcoins gives them the privacy which they want. It is anonymous, just like cash. So I think that's actually a virtue of the currency itself.
So there was talk in the panel about this huge number of alternative currencies that currently exist. How do you view that affecting the ecosystem of alternative currencies as a whole? Will it get too fragmented, or will one succeed?
Yes, so as you said, besides Bitcoin, there are multiple other digital currencies which are emerging, like Ripple, Wen, Namecoin. So one way of looking at it is you might get worried and say fragmentation is happening even before the industry has even started off. So that's clearly a risk. However, I would say that we should not be so critical, because you have to put in perspective that Bitcoin is just 3 years old. So I think expectations have to be lowered as well. We're not saying that Bitcoin will be used for buying a house tomorrow. But coming to your point regarding what does fragmentation means, I think it also implies the fact that there are so many different currencies which have come up now shows that the barriers to entry are low. And it shows that as a consumer, you will have the benefit of having the optionality of investing in or purchasing multiple different kinds of currencies, which means that the hegemony of former powers over currency will be diluted. And a basic law of economics is that lower barriers to entry is better for the consumer. Greater optionality is better for the consumer. So I think that's the biggest virtue of Bitcoin. The rest is all details. The biggest virtue is, and I've repeated this earlier as well, that it lowers the barriers to entry. It allows an innovation which leads to lowering of costs, which leads to greater efficiency, faster systems, which eventually benefit the consumer. And the consumer might be the merchant in a transaction. The consumer might be me and you if we are involved in a transaction of money. And that does pose risk to the bank, which was your earlier question. But I think innovative banks might also find avenues of growth within this opportunity.